Hey, everybody. Thanks for having us, CRS. I'm going to plunge right in and start with Heather and ask her about Shabuzi. She worked Shabuzi from the very beginning with Empire, and I'm wondering if you can tell me a little bit about the path that went from the very start with Shabuzi to trying to break him at radio.
Yeah. Hey guys. I started working with Boozy in 2020, and at the time he had come from another label. He had been independent for a minute, and so being at Empire and being independent, taking him from more of a hip hop space and then listening to the records that he had sent us, wanting to be more in the country lane, country genre, and to tell more of his story of how he grew up. And so from the jump, it was sort of figuring out of like, okay, how do we start telling your story, not only sonically, but also just narratively. And so album one that we did with him sort of bridged the gap a little bit. We had some, very hip hop driven tracks, but then at the same time, we would have some country driven tracks that, again, sonically. But and then that led into album two, which was where a bar song was on that one. And so then that kind of got us from storytelling from the first time that we released an album with him to the next.
Got it. So when you came on a bar song and you started to take that to radio, was that a no-brainer?
Well, we didn't ship to radio right out of the gate. I mean, when you first hear a bar song, and I first heard it in that January before we released it in April, a radio campaign was always in the plan, but not something that we did from the jump. But we didn't do that from the jump with any of the artists that we had. So we didn't go to radio first. We tried to build it digitally. And with this song, obviously, we released it in April. We started teasing it a couple weeks before. And once it came out, just from culturally driven, streaming driven, how much it started taking over the market, we ended up shipping it to radio about a month after that. But for me, we had always taken the approach that we would go to radio when they started calling. And so once radio started calling me, then it was sort of like, okay, now let's hit go.
So Alyssa, you're looking at me. This is where you come in. So tell me about when a bar song first came to you through iHeart.
So I'm obviously a data person, so a lot of times for me, I'm looking at the research. Our team works very closely with the programmers on seeing what's over-indexing and what artists are popping. So it came very early to me personally in terms of seeing the metrics on that song. And then, we then start communicating those metrics to radio. And Shabuzi was one of those incredible examples of a song where sonically you knew it was interesting, sonically you knew you loved it, but the metrics were also matching that, right? And there was interest from multiple formats. And that was one of the first artists to really, now there's so much of it, but Shabuzi, even when he was crossing over, it was a little earlier into that multi-format of something that was country feeling, but also had pop and just went to so many different formats. But, again, once the metrics hit a certain point, to your point, then everybody knows this. It started becoming a real cultural thing. And then radio was always about pop culture and what are the biggest hits. And it started becoming pretty obvious that this was something that was a cross-genre smash. And that's when it really started just kind of spreading across all the different formats.
Let me follow up with you, Alyssa, and then we'll bring in Emily, which is, tell me about the process of adding a song to the prominent country stations on iHeart. How much of it is kind of instinct and how much of it is metrics, and how has that changed?
I think the hardest thing for us that we try and balance all the time is what is the perfect blend of art and science? Because we do have so many metrics now. Back in the day, I think it was very much just programmer ear, programmer instinct. Now we have so many metrics, sometimes too many metrics, right, to even know what to do with it at any given time. So I do think we're always trying to find that perfect balance of making sure that we're paying attention to the metrics, taking them seriously, but also you don't ever want to lose, it's art. It's still art at the end of the day, and I don't think you ever want to lose the concept that radio programmers are expert curators, and when they hear something and they know what's going to resonate with their audience, it's still important to step out on that, because sometimes radio leads the metrics, and sometimes I think metrics lead radio, but I think both are super important to pay attention to and not just go too far in either of those directions.
Emily, I want to bring you in here, and I have a two-part question for you. I want to ask you about the Amazon Music playlist, Country Heat, and sort of how that came together, because I know you were involved in that. And then secondly, how is your formula, Amazon Music's formula, and Country Heat in particular, in terms of the ratio of gut feeling versus metrics, how is that different from what Alyssa just described in terms of adding a song?
Yeah, so Country Heat was the first global playlist that we launched back in 2018. Super exciting for me for many reasons, but I think incredibly important for Amazon Music because it really showed our dedication to the country genre, kind of launching with that first around the world, which is really exciting, kind of planting our flag, being like country's important. So that was incredibly exciting and impactful, and for it to be around this long, we're in 2026 now, is really exciting. Our Country Heat brand, which is encompassing of our playlist stations and podcasts, since 2016 has amassed over 30 billion streams, which is really impressive. And I think what's most exciting to me, that's not just encompassing of sort of the biggest artists in the space, but also developing artists. So, you know, somebody like a Shabuzi, who is starting out up until, you know, having one of the biggest songs in the world with Bar Song. You know, I think it's really encompassing from developing to superstar artists, you know, amassing those streams in that space is really exciting. It's our biggest hit delivery system. Ultimately, my job as the head of global country and folk and Americana curation for Amazon Music is to play the hits. And the biggest hits in country music live on Country Heat for us on our service. So I think, you know, for us, it's always, you know, hits, you know, that's a different term depending on who you ask. What does a hit mean? I think for us, it is a mixture of data. It's a mixture of our kind of like gut feeling. What's on Country, if you look at it now, it's a mixture of sort of the biggest artists in the space mixed with songs from our breakthrough artists like Carter Faith, some of our artists to watch like Zach John King and Braxton Keith and Elizabeth Nichols for 2026. Like artists we believe you obviously love, like Luke Combs, who just has his new album out today, and artists we believe you are gonna love. And again, it's, you know, we have a big part of Amazon Music is voice. And when we say voice, we mean Alexa. So, and we have something in our back end called Amazon Music for Artists, which artists and their teams can look at. We can sort of see if your voice is kind of cold, meaning not a lot of people are asking for you, or your music, and then on fire. So I think we look at data in a lot of different ways. We have our own proprietary data, which is like, how is your music doing within the service on our individual playlists, and then how, you know, voice, that's really impactful in the sense that somebody is actually, a fan is actually asking for your music, whether that's a song, an album, a lyric. You as an artist, that's a direct customer action. That's incredibly impactful. They went out of your way. It wasn't a passive action, it was an active action. And so that's also important to us too. So I think we're taking a lot into consideration when, how do we program. And so it's, you know, just kind of like what Alyssa said, it's like we are hired for our expertise and our knowledge of the market and what is going on, but also how do we interpret the data that we do have at our fingertips? There is so much, internal and external, and kind of how do we build the best playlist for our customers, and also, you know, reading what they're telling us, seeing the signals, watching charts, external and external, and making sure like we're reflecting what they're telling us they want to listen to.
Can I just take that one step
Please,
further?
yes, Alyssa.
You know, when you were talking about, like, it's so harder to find the mass consensus hits because there's so many places where people consume and experience music. So, again, we have to look at everything, right? From, you know, media base to, you know, Chartmetric to Luminate to ticket sales to social, all of it, because you could have a big TikTok hit, you could have a big Amazon hit, you could have a big Spotify hit, you could have a big YouTube hit. And it's about finding those songs that are actually performing across all of those different platforms and are demonstrating that they're, you know, growing at a level and really more of a mass consensus hit. And I think radio is sometimes that last piece to bring it to the masses, like, and in the more cohesive way, is in terms of like, we're kind of the masses versus some of the lean forward, streaming people or the people that love to watch video or even the TikToks, forward people. So I think it gets harder and harder, and that's why looking at all of the different platforms and measuring how a song is performing becomes very important to figure out what are the real mass consensus hits that everybody wants to hear.
Yeah, good point. Heather, coming back to you, let's get back to the sort of the overall theme of this panel, which is more cross-pollination and hits that are coming with kind of a mixture of different genres. Can you talk about how important that is now and maybe give a couple of examples of artists? And I'm jamming a few questions in here, but also the reception that these types of songs get both at streaming and at radio.
Yeah, I think when I'm obviously on a different side of the business than them, and so from a artist signing to artist developing, I've always had a very like kind of left of center ear, and so I've growing up with traditional country and right down the middle country, I still love it. But for me, just from what I love to enjoy and help develop is that sort of left of center, and what I mean by that is that cross genre and that genre blending. I think for what I've been able to do so well in my career is sort of take an artist that sits in multiple different pockets and try and find pieces of that story and homes for them, and sort of push against the grain and push against the mold of going like, no, this belongs here. And we were even walking backstage talking about an artist, and it was kind of like there's conversations, does this fit in country and does this fit in pop? And I'm like, yes, the answer to that is yes, it fits in both. And helping tell that story, because just like Alyssa said, it's like they're looking at so many different platforms, and for me then I'm on the other side where I am pushing an artist and encouraging an artist and helping create content for the artist, and really kind of building it from not only socials to then engagement to then tours to the entire business for them. So when I do that, it is very much of what does this content look like for this genre as well as this culture? What does it look like for country? What does it look like for, and again, try and find that audience there so that I can go to them and say, you should be playlisting this and you should be programming this, and please do, and please either lean in early or here are the numbers because this is working. And for me, I always like to have that conversation of like, hey, this is moving and this is bubbling and this is moving, in multiple different formats, because I try and find the audience, and I don't care where they are. If they like it, if they stream it, if they buy it, I will. It doesn't matter in what format for me. It really is about trying to find somebody that just likes a great song with great music, and then have them start championing an artist. We will lean in. I'm never precious with leaning in. We've got to make sure and work this at country radio, and we've got to make sure it's like we will do that in time, because it's like I want the audience to be there. And for me, it just becomes a part of the plan. Obviously, we want to be good partners with everyone, and it just becomes a part of the plan that for me it's about building their fan base, building their audience, and building it culturally, and that's what helps build a career. Right, and then hoping we have partners that champion and come on board sooner rather than later. That's always the goal. I like to save those like requests and like favors that I feel like I might need to call in when there's something of like, hey, I really believe in this, and this is why, and this is where it's going. And so that's what it's really important. I think to answer your second question of kind of what I've faced within that. I think it's changed. I think thankfully, as listenership has changed, I think then the partners have adjusted to that as well, of going that this fits in multiple different pockets. I will say with Boozy early on, him coming from more of a hip hop space to going country, it didn't feel right, even from a storytelling perspective, that we could go, okay, his last release was this very heavy hip hop track, and then we're gonna drop a down the middle country track. That wasn't organic or authentic to him, regardless. And so I think what I always leaned on and encouraged, like, just tell your story. Use your sound, because that will fit in the world, because that's what's authentic. And that will find a home. It will find a home, and it will find an audience when you are just you authentically. And I think the fans can tell that more than ever, right? They're able to sniff out authenticity or inauthenticity, really quickly. And so as long as it's authentic to the artist, I think then it will find a home, and then it will find the partners that will champion that. Doesn't mean that there's not frustration or something on our side when we want those champions and we want them early, to help tell that story and be a part of the journey, and be a part of it as soon as they will. But I think it's getting better. I think it's getting better. They're getting quicker to champion, and with all the collaborations, and with how the algorithms are working, and with what we're up against, it's only helping and it's only benefiting artists to collaborate. And I think within those collaborations, that's building. And so, and artists are very aware of that. They're very aware of how the algorithms are working. And if they're going, okay, I'm, jelly roll with this artist, and these two artists collaborating. I mean, we're seeing it with Ella, and we're seeing it across, so many artists right now that are doing that. It's twofold. One, it makes a great record, but two, the algorithms are wanting that, and they're encouraging that. And so that just again blends and has the ability to blend a lot of different worlds together.
Interesting. I want to follow up with you because I'm professionally obligated to do so. You mentioned referring to an artist on the walk up backstage. Which artist were you talking about?
I was talking about Maddie Pruitt.
So, have you taken that artist to radio yet? Can you tell that
Yeah,
journey?
yeah, she's
They're
actually,
just starting to.
yeah, they just started. She's actually number 45 on pop radio, but been working with her for a little bit, and 16 years old, and it's very country, but it's also very pop, and so.
Well, I was laughing at what she said too, because a lot of people in here know, like, I'm very passionate about a band called Shinedown that's crossing over right now. I'm like, and everyone's like, why are you so passionate? It's the greatest example of the power of radio and the power of crossover that I've ever experienced in my career. And when you were saying that, like last night, we had Brent, lead singer, in our suite, and he was talking to people, and he's like, when people hear it, they're like, that's a rock song. And he's like, yeah, and they're like, and that's a country song. He's like, yeah, like to your point, we are a format, or we're a medium that programs in formats, but the audience doesn't listen in formats anymore, right? And they just like a good song. So a lot of the cross-pollination that's been going on, I'm a data person versus a programmer, so I think I'm a little more renegade and early in the sense that I don't typically put those programming rules in my head when I'm looking at something. I'm just seeing what's popping or what the effect of something is once it is getting a shot. And that's why I love the concept of cross-pollination. And I think sometimes there's a discomfort of going outside of what we think the listeners expect or what we think they're used to. But the truth is, I think we're seeing in a lot of the research that it's bringing a new audience in, and the audience is more open to receiving that. So I think it's really great, to your point, when you find these great cross-collab opportunities, each of those fan bases are kind of coming together, and you're realizing the fans aren't out there judging it. They're just going, I love this song. They're not going, oh, this should be country, or this should be pop. And things do work on multiple formats. I think if we all looked at our personal playlist, I'm anywhere from Ozzy Osbourne to Air Supply to U2 to whoever, and we're all over the place, and that's what the audience is looking at too. So I think cross-pollination is a great thing, and the more we continue to be open to that, I think the stronger it's actually making the platforms, not the opposite.
Good point. I want to ask about hip hop. I'm going to follow up with you, Alyssa, and then I'll bring in Emily. I mean, in the not so distant past, there was hip hop and there was country, and never the twain shall meet. But more recently, for a lot of reasons, I'm thinking about Post Malone as one of them. It seems like country radio is more open to this cross-pollination of hip-hop meeting with country. Can you talk about the evolution of that, Alyssa? Like, was there a point where if hip-hop came to you as a programmer, you said, that's not us, whereas now perhaps you're more open to it? Or is my theory correct on that?
I think Heather touched on it perfectly in terms of it's about the authenticity and it's about the music. I think Post Malone did a fantastic job of, he came to Nashville, he immersed himself in the format. It was authentic. He wrote with everybody. He recorded with, the biggest artists. He recorded incredible songs, right? He did it in a way that was so authentic and genuine and awesome that everybody was really open to it, and I think that's why it worked. I think, both the programming side, the DSPs, the fans, everybody notices when it's something that's just forced and trying to happen versus something that's really genuine and and really is coming like from a place of art and a really authentic place with the artist. So I think in that particular case, like again, a Big X the Plug we talked about earlier as a great example of, you know, the music is incredible, the collabs are incredible, you know, it works because it's authentic. It's not a hip hop person trying to get into country. It's an artist working with another artist and creating great music that multiple people, multiple genres can enjoy and fans can love regardless of what their core, you know, music tastes are.
Emily, let's talk about the history of what this panel is about, this cross-pollination, country plus whatever else, whether it's hip hop or whether we were talking about Ed Sheeran earlier. And Alyssa mentioned Big X the Plug, which we were just talking about backstage. Can you talk about, since Country Heat started in 2018, kind of the evolution of that kind of music, meaning two genres together, including country?
Well, I think country rap in and of itself has been around for like a long time. Obviously, cult forward. I think there was a big conversation around it when Little Nas X came out with Old Town Road. There's like, you know, New York Times podcast did a whole thing on it, introduced like, you know, and that whole conversation. I know like when we put together our country strategy as a team in like 2021, 2022, I was like, it's coming back. Like we've got Jelly Roll, we have David Morris, we've got, you know, this little like Kid G, and then all of our rappers decided to sing. And I was like, okay, well, I guess we're not rapping anymore, right? Like, you know, in the emergence of Shaboozey and the song Beverly Hills really kind of started to pop on our charts. And I was like, okay, like, this is interesting, right? Like, I think it's been, you know, I think as younger generations kind of come into the country genre and the format, like they grew up in a time when, you know, I still think genre matters, especially in country music, but I think it matters less, especially to younger generations. But I think, you know, of course, it's like I'm somebody who grew up listening to Shania and the Chicks and Faith Hill, but I also, you know, listen to En Vogue and Kendrick Lamar. Like, of course, these influences are going to kind of seep into your system. So it's not surprising to me or shocking that you've got younger artists who also are blending hip hop or R&B influences into their music. It makes complete and total sense to me. I think, you know, we're seeing that happen more and more. And, you know, I think on our Country Heat Weekly podcast, I believe Big X talked about, you know, Luke Combs reached out to him and was like, hey, like, you know, I think there are fans, and it's really cool to sort of see other country artists kind of, I don't want to say reaching across the aisle, but just sort of being fans of other artists and other spaces, and sort of being like, would you want to do something, or have you thought about being in this space? And when you meet with these artists, like Big X, you know, he's a intimidating presence, but he was really nervous, and he was like, I don't know how I'm going to be received in this space. And he's got the biggest of big collaborators on the album, like hitting right, like Ella Langley, Post Malone, Luke Combs, Tucker Wetmore, Warren Zite. Like, you're just like, man, like, you know, and the song with Bailey, All the Way, blew up in 2025. Incredible hook, incredible record. He made a breakup album. That is one of our, heartbreak is a big country theme. I don't know how you get like bigger than that in this space. Massive hit, massive across the board, not just in country, but in pop, like, you know, multi-genre spaces, like everywhere. And I think, you know, it's our job as programmers across, like, a big thing with our Country Weekly podcast is like, hey, like, if it's big in country music right now, it's hitting with our customers and our listeners, we need to talk about it. How do we get him on here to talk about like this evolution and the record and why he wanted to be in the space? And I think it really helped that other artists in the space reached out to him, like, and wanted him to just like be a part of it and or collaborate and or like, I think that's great. It's just like, hey, I think you're great. You're from Texas. Like, you know, there's a lot of there's more similarities than there are differences. So like, how can we work together? And the music completely works. He's also performing at Stagecoach in April, which Amazon Music, Twitch, Prime Video is live streaming. I'm super excited to see what that's going to look like. I can only imagine that the fans are going to go nuts. The collaborators on the record, a lot of them are performing also at Stagecoach. I'm going to make an assumption that there might be some surprises on stage. Like, I just would hope that people will jump on stage. So I think, it's like we're going to continue to see more of this. And I think country music talks about life. So does hip hop. So it makes a lot of sense to me that there's a lot of cross pollination there.
Absolutely. Let me follow up really quickly. You said that Big X said at one point, I don't know how I'm going to be received in this space. Can you elaborate on what context he said that in? Did he say, because you said you've met him, did he say that to you personally, or are you talking about media remarks?
I think it was like, hey, asking a question, what influenced you to do this? I think one, he had went through a breakup in his personal life, and that really influenced his album. But I think there's always a fear when you're doing something different. Like, he's a hip hop artist. He has now continued to make hip hop music. It's not like he's decided I'm only making country music now. He made a country album. I don't know if he'll do it again. But I think he was like, hey, people have reached out. He was on, him and Shabuzi are old friends. He did a song on Shabuzi's last record called Drink Don't Need No Mix. That is a complete and total smash. That was really well received. And I think it's like, hey, there's little things popping up here and there. This could potentially be a thing. He's getting encouragement from other artists. Why don't I lean in here? Working with key songwriters in the space, who are also fans of his. I think it's also getting that encouragement. Again, I think there's a lot of stereotypes out there about what country music is or isn't. And I think for an artist to hear hey, there are fans in country also listening to hip hop who know him, who want to work with him, I think that's really important. We're not on an island. We're not just one thing. I think we always say country music isn't a monolith. It's really important. I think we've seen that over time. We see that year after year. We're not just, one thing. We don't talk about one thing. We don't sound like one thing. And artists kind of grow and evolve, and it's important as a genre, as a community, as artists. And I think the artists don't ever want to be put in a box. So it's important to continue and evolve and embrace that change.
Yes, well put. Heather, when we were talking in our pre-panel prep, you said that for these kinds of collaborations, for cross-pollinated songs, if you will, but I think you were also referring to sort of untraditional types of songs. You said with regard to country radio, the door is more widely open now than it used to be, but it's not all the way open. What were you referring to there?
I wish it was more widely open. I think the door's cracked. I think that we talked about that. I think it is. From what I've learned from Alyssa, even in this, it's more of the long tail game, and that's for me of why I've never worked with an artist that was like, we're gonna do country radio first, and we're not gonna take one record and we're just gonna work that one song and we're gonna hope it gets pushed up the chart and we're gonna take that. That's been a very tried and true way of what country music has been and how it's operated for a really long time. That's shifting, thankfully, and I think within that shift, the door is opening to experience and to have an artist that is playing the radio game, sooner rather than later. However, I think on my side is that becomes a part of the plan, and it's not the full plan. Whereas when I got in this business eons ago, then that was the plan. They would take one song, they would work that to artists, they would work that to radio with that artist, and then they wouldn't release anything. They wouldn't release other music. They wouldn't release until that song, would rise on the charts. And if it did, it could take 52 weeks, and that artist wasn't releasing anything else in between that. And so then when obviously the tide started to shift when streaming platforms became a much bigger deal and artists had that direct access to fans in a very different way. And that changed how we started releasing music, and that changed how artists had the accessibility directly to their fans, and also then other programs became involved. That's only helped, again, open the door a little bit more. And so I think within that it's super helpful because you've got these artists that are releasing and that we're trying to balance all of the algorithms, right? I tell artists all the time, it's like we're up against algorithms without sacrificing the art and the craft of the song. and without sacrificing the authenticity of who you are as an artist and as a creative. And it's a balance. It's always a, hey, this is what's best for the algorithm. This is what's best. This is how early we need to pitch something. This is when we need to go to radio. This is when we don't need to go to radio. It's a hard conversation. I've lost artists, signing artists because of these conversations, because it's like, no, they think the pathway is very singular when it doesn't have to be. And so when it doesn't have to be this one route, it can be building underground fans, having fans in small markets that are just coming to shows and singing as loud as they can, and having that build in smaller cities and in their smaller communities, have it build very organically. And because of social media, because of TikTok, because of those platforms, they now have that direct accessibility to the fans. And then I tell artists they've also never had this much responsibility, because so much now is on their shoulders to continue building, continue building the story, continue building the narrative. And so within that, again, country radio becomes a part of the equation with that, but it's not the full equation. And so as it becomes the conversations of going, is it time? Is it researching? What does this look like? My conversation with artists become a lot easier of going like, not yet, right? When again, that's still a conversation with artists. They're like, when are we shipping this to country radio? When do we get on this program? When is Amazon telling us that we'll be the next artist to watch? You know, and like, can we do this? And what do we need to do? And because they're looking for just an ounce of belief. You know, they are, I think we forget a lot of times that they are the creatives, that they create something in studios and in homes, especially in Nashville. You know, they're writing and they create something and they hold it so close, and then they're going, just somebody believe in it. Just somebody believe in it. And so then it's like, okay, she believes in it, he believes in it, and it's building those champions one at a time. That's a grueling process after you've made this beautiful art. The lucky ones, and I again, to be a part of one that just takes off like a bar song, there's a lot that is that's not the common story. I'm usually on the other side of this conversation, where I am talking to artists and just continuing to push and encourage and remind. You know, a lot of my job is just reminding and going like, keep going. We'll find the fans, we'll find the champions, but they have to, you know, the encouragement behind that is the belief. And then what I feel like a lot of my job is to have these conversations and to say yes to panels and to do these things, to go like, this is what is still difficult. This is what is still, the door's not wide open here. And nor should it be. I'll be the first to say, I don't think it should be wide open. I think it should be strategic. Everything that I do, from a release schedule to creative, to building an artist, bridging a gap, cross-pollinating, however we want to phrase it, from taking an artist for where they are and helping them get to where they want to go. That's my job, is the in-between, and helping them pull in all the people that we need to build that along the way, and to help tell that story, and then just hope that we get them in front of and just get a millisecond of ears from the people that are listening, that can program and that can do this, that can actually exponentially grow in a much quicker way, rather than, you know, piece by piece. So I don't know if that answers your questions, but I got really long-winded there. So
yeah,
thanks.
absolutely. Alyssa, I wanted to ask you, we were talking backstage, you've been with iHeart 30 plus years.
Woo!
Going back to, yes.
That's a long
hand
time.
for
That's a
Alyssa.
long time.
That just makes me old.
Hey.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a long radio career. Very impressive.
Makes me old.
But I mean, you go back to pre-Clear Channel, pre-J-Core, you were telling me.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, how does it make you feel hearing what Heather was saying, where it's sort of like, you know, country radio used to be, that's number one, that's all encompassing, it's all powerful. And now it's, I mean, this is not news to you, but now there's so many different outlets. Country radio is not the first outlet often that Heather goes to. What are you thinking when you hear that, sort of emotionally, if you will?
I've watched the trend. I started selling media based on floppy disk. And so I've
You
watched
cannot be that old. That's crazy.
I've watched all of this develop in a way, and it's always been very interesting. I was listening to you talk, and I kept thinking to myself, we've always just been a little off from one another, regardless of what it was. Like, a lot of times the labels didn't have access to our research, and as you know, DSPs and other platforms grew, we didn't have access, or as much access certainly, to that. So the hardest thing about all of this has been finding the balance of what each of our roles are in all of this, right? Because the artists obviously need the sales and the streaming platforms to monetize their music now, but our listeners aren't. They're a little slower, right? And we actually find it was interesting what you were saying, because the typical model is, and especially for a big artist, they want to like come onto that chart and go up fast and ring that bell. But we actually find that the longer and the more strategic it takes, the better it ends up for a song, because what you ultimately want is to end up in that recurrent or that gold, format or status, and then play forever. We're now the long tail, and I get that sometimes people don't see us as the coolest kid in town anymore, but I do think that we still see that. I think radio still creates the superstars. I definitely think you could be successful, you can make a lot of money, you could do well in this business, but I challenge people to come up with too many people that have never had at least one radio hit and are a household name. I still think we're the piece where we're still bringing you to the masses, and we're still kind of giving you that big awareness that, again, you could have a massive streaming hit and still walk down the street and ask 10 people if they've ever heard of you, and they still don't. It's interesting to us to see sometimes even like massive songs and how unfamiliar those songs still are with our listeners, right? So I do think country radio, more than anything, is still very important in the ecosystem, and it's something that the artists still love, and a lot of their touring and some of the other things that they do is based on their number ones and their hits and things like that. So I'm very happy that we still very much matter. But I think that it's okay that there's lots of different platforms. I think everybody brings a different strength to the table, and we're all an important part of the journey and the piece of that artist's career. So I don't love when people don't think radio brings value, because we see differently, or we see research that shows us differently, but I think we bring as much value as the other platforms. But it's important for the managers and the labels and the artists to really understand that, and understand how to partner with us and use our platform in a way that benefits them.
Thank you. Yes. Sorry, I can't see. I want to make sure that
12 minutes,
okay,
41
got it.
seconds.
Thank you. Okay, so this is my third year in a row moderating a panel for CRS. Thank you for having me. And thank you. The reason I'm saying that is because Cowboy Carter has come up in the pre-panel discussion 3 years in a row now. And so I wanted to let that cat out of the bag and ask Emily, when Cowboy Carter came up, when it first came out, for Country Heat, did you go, yes, we're going to add all these Beyonce tracks to our playlist, or was there any hesitancy there?
Yes. I was so excited.
So you just tell me a little bit, elaborate, please. Tell me a little bit about sort of what tracks did you add first? Why was that record important for Country Heat?
Well, we got Texas Hold'em first. It was really fun to leave a Super Bowl party and be like, I have to leave and I can't tell you why. So that was great. I think, listen, she makes culture. She's one of our best performers. And, I think if the rumors are true and what she is doing, she did with Renaissance and what she did with Cowboy Carter, and if if the rumor is true with Act 3 and it's going to be rock, I'm here for it. I think I'm all about facts and history, and I think there is all music is black music, and ultimately if she is from Texas, please step into this space, own this space. I love that she brought in younger artists into the space. I love that she brought Shabuzi and Raina Roberts and Tara Kennedy and Brittany Spencer. It's amazing. And Dolly Parton and Willie Nelson. She made it a Beyonce record, first and foremost. And it was great. And so it's why not embrace that? I don't it's not controversial, to me at least. And the music's great. And there's so many wonderful songs on that album. I love the song with Miley Cyrus. I mean, I'm waiting for a true Miley Cyrus country album. I think we are waiting, for sure. I think Bangers is it's one of my favorite records of all time. We're
Same.
waiting, Miley. Speaking that, manifesting that into existence. But yeah, no, I think it's not a controversial decision. I think we want her, like, to bring it in to the space. I think the more eyeballs on country music, the better. And why not? I think, again, it's like, if we really are a community, and like, why not welcome one of the biggest artists in the world into the space, who like wants to really bring, you know, eyeballs and a culture into it. Like, this isn't performative, this is real. So like, why not?
Alyssa, if you don't mind my following up, was it the same? I mean, the way Emily describes it, Beyonce making great country music, no brainer. Was that the way it was received
For
at
our
iHeart?
company, it was the same as well because it's Beyonce, right? And I think, as I was listening to you talk, I think one thing I love that we've been doing the last couple of years more than ever is investing in artists and not so much overthinking, is this a perfect hit? Is this the biggest hit? But it's Beyonce, right? And doesn't Beyonce, like, hasn't she earned her chance to let the audience tell us whether or not they like this song, you know? And so we were definitely very early on in the Beyonce game, and we were very early to support that at country radio. You know, I think about Jelly Roll as another artist that I think has done an incredible job of, when I first like met Jelly, and again, I started seeing the metrics on him, and I remember talking to Tom Pullman and being like, let's do this event for our kickoff to Z100, and they were like, looked at me because it was so early on, and I was like, we want to be in the Jelly Roll business, you know? Like, he's somebody that we want to support because I think this is a big artist, and I think, so when you come to the Beyoncés and the Jelly Rolls and some of these artists that we're starting to see now, that they're superstars, and a lot of them are earning, I think, the opportunity for us to trust in their craft and trust in their art and give them the opportunity for the fan to tell us what they feel instead of us trying to determine what it is for them.
Heather, I want to bring you into this. Going back to this cross-pollination theme, when you have artists that you're looking to sign or looking to work, do you look for that more, perhaps, that quality of bringing genres together than you did 5 years ago, 8 years ago? Do you feel like the commercial market is more receptive to that sort of thing now than it was?
I don't know that I look for it more than I ever did. I think I always had an ear for it regardless. You know, growing up in Texas, I grew up on country music. I grew up on George Strait and the Judds and all of those. But then I also, you know, would listen to Nelly and Ludacris and all of those artists. So it was, for me, it was such an, as I look to artists and as I look to sign them, I always try and find something different. And so with whatever that ends up being, you know, I remember hearing Wyatt Flores music for the very first time when I got a SoundCloud link, and I thought, this is really cool. This is great. This is just great music. I'm not really bent towards, oh, it has to fit in this genre, or what genre is this. For me, I listen to everything because I just listen for great records. I can find the home. And I can find where it belongs, and I can help tell the story. But for me, a great song will stand the test of time. And so when I hear that, and that's what it always goes back to: great writing, great music, and then however we need to build the, you know, campaigns around it, whatever the visuals need to look like, all of that then ends up being a part of that of just craft that we're you know, in developing an artist. And so maybe, I mean, again, I don't know that it's changed from how I was signing, and just music that I loved. It's always been about the song. And so wherever that fits, I just happened to be in Nashville and happened to start my career in country music. But when I left Universal, you know, then I started the Nashville division of Empire, which was a hip hop label. So it was just I sort of naturally fell into that, and also just my ears being bent towards that, and just finding great records. And so having a wins of Shabuzi and then following that with Wyatt Flores and then sort of being able to follow that up. My next signing was an artist, Cece, who's a buzz cut female, making like Shania-esque records but rock sort of badass so I don't, there's not really a roadmap for me. It's just great records. And I think then that gives people no reason to not program it, and artists, and audiences not to listen to it if it's a great record at the end of the day.
You said something I want to elaborate on earlier, which is that you've lost artists because they had this sort of one track.
I knew you'd bring that back up. I saw your eyes twin.
Can you, I don't know if you can give any examples of that, but if you can, great. If not, can you just tell us what those conversations have been like?
Yeah, I mean, there's still, the conversation is less and less that this is happening. I think even 5 years ago, it was often. It was often when I was at Empire, and we didn't even have a radio team. And I was fighting for one because I was like, this is what matters in the genre. And I was like, nope, we'll do that when we can. So it wasn't even really my decision, and probably thankfully in that. But there were several artists that I was hoping would take a chance on me and on us, and they're like, but can you take me to radio? And I thought, well, we won't one at the beginning, and did lose some of those. I'm trying to think of an artist specific, if that even matters, but I can't think of one off the top of my head right now. But if you find me later, maybe I'll have thought of one between now and then. But yeah, there was several, and for me now that's a bit of a red flag. I won't sign the artist if that's the first question and all that they would care about. And I just sort of say, because I'm just really transparent even when I'm talking to artists and signing, of like, I'm not the right team for you. If that's your only priority and your only goal, I'm not it. And there's somebody out there that will help you and be a great team member for you, but that's not my forte, and that's never been my approach. And so I'm not the right place for you. So luckily for me, that's that conversation has shifted. But early on, and I say early on, even 5 years ago, 4 years ago, that was a big turning point in a lot of conversations for artists, that they would go with this other label just because there was not only a team there in place, but they were promised that they would. We promise we will. And I said, I promise I'll never stop your releases, but and we'll go to radio when it makes sense. And for me, that makes sense when I've got radio calling and we've got the numbers. And again, that just becomes a part of the plan and not the full plan.
I think that's the hardest part, is when and what to bring to radio, right?
Yeah.
Because you can have a massive streaming song that's a successful song but isn't a radio hit. Or we have situations where, because of the way the DSPs are and their timetables, we're still, building the first single, and there's already a second single out, and the label might be in a rush to work the second single while we're just starting to see research and build the first single. So it is one of the hardest
Yeah, it's also
balances.
crazy making for the artist. So imagine my role on this side. And I'm like, no, I swear we should release, but we should release over here, and, so.
Yeah, so having artists understand what to bring to radio and when to bring it to radio and what makes sense, and how some song, and nothing is the same thing. Some
I'm just going to
songs
give them
fly
your
up,
cell
some people
number and
take-
be like, not yet. I'm like, I'm swearing, not yet.
Exactly. We should do meetings together.
Yes.
Make it easier.
Oh, you say that. You heard her here. You heard her here.
Let's see here. We have a minute and a half left, so I'm going to close with Emily. And in that time period, I want to ask you, you gave so many delightful examples from Country Heat of this panel theme, which is cross-pollination. And I wonder if you could run through one or two that you're super excited about that have been hitting on the playlist.
Pressure.
No pressure.
I mean, there's, so many. I think there's a wonderful Amazon Music original that came out this week. Talk about cross-pollination, global cross-pollination. There's a song with Braxton Keith and Tyler Rodriguez, Do I Ever Cross Your Mind? So it's a cover. She is from Australia. He is American. And they both are playing CMC Rocks this week, so a big Australian country music festival. And that's kind of like a blending of worlds, if you will. And I think that was a goal of his, and it came together really beautifully, like a true duet. And so that's been really exciting to see. And I think an exciting one that popped up last year that, again, like somebody completely off platform who fully broke out on TikTok, an artist named Joshua Sloan, who only put out songs on TikTok, had not released anything to streaming or any music service, was playing tiny shows in Kentucky. He is from Kentucky. Fans knew every single word to every single song. Again, did not have a song released to streaming just because of TikTok and socials. He put out his debut album, Thinking Too Much, I believe the first week of December last year, and it just like blew up immediately, kind of ended up on viral charts. His voice data for us was like on the On Fire range. A beautiful album from start to finish. I truly listened to it from start to finish, which I can't say about a lot of records. He played 2 shows this year, one in Houston, one in Chicago, and opened for Zach Bryan at Michigan Stadium, so the biggest ticketed event in the United States last year.
Go Blue.
Yeah, and we'll hopefully do more this year, but again, he's pretty quiet, under the radar, but it moved so quickly through our programming. It has been on Country Heat. My favorite song off the record is I Am Yours, You're Mine, but I think the bigger hits are Shark Attack, and I'm blanking on the other one. But anything you find off the record is stunning and beautiful. So that's a very left of center. Again, very Zach Bryan, could be country, could be folk, could be alt, could be kind of all over the place. But he performs just with an acoustic guitar and acoustic accompaniment, and kids are singing every single word to the song. So I love it. Yeah.
Nailed it. It has really been my honor to be here with these esteemed and important women in the industry. Thank you so much for this panel, and we'll see you at CRS.
Thank you, guys.